Hi guys, so a quick update on ULEZ, on the ULEZ expansion that's muted to happen on the August 29th this year. And a little bit of a credit now to BBC. I previously did a video on the BBC on a page that actually exists on the BBC News website, which is actually quite fair in its discussion over the contentious issues regarding ULEZ. The pros and cons that it lists are actually very, very fair and correct in most of the cases. So they're finally starting to pay attention a little bit to this. So all the people that say that, you know, talking about it, making content about it, protesting about it, making noise doesn't have an impact. Well, I think it is having an impact. I think it has had an impact. I think that even if you consider the fact, combine that with the fact that pretty much all of the candidates that are standing up or that have put their names forward for the candidacy of standing for the mayoral election next year, which is going to happen against Zaka Khan, pretty much all of them are saying that the first thing, the top of the discussion is ULEZ, and the fact that they're going to scrap the ULEZ expansion at the very least, or at least put it on hold. So it is becoming a big issue. So what is the latest thing that's happened? It's come out, I think, yesterday or the day before. Zaka Khan and TfL are sticking to their guns, saying that only 1 in 10 cars actually are going to be impacted by the ULEZ expansion when it happens, like I said, at the end of August. Now, I've said for a long time that it's not true. It's a lot more cars than that. In fact, the Conservatives and Liberals came out with data, Lib Dems I should say, came out with data to prove that actually it's a lot more cars that are impacted. And now the BBC have also jumped on that as well. So again, it's nice to see the BBC finally getting on board with looking at ULEZ a little bit more analytically and objectively, rather than just, oh my goodness, we must support ULEZ because it's a government thing. Like I said, the mayor has been saying there's 1 in 10 cars, only 1 in 10 cars are impacted. But the fact is that it's a lot more than that. Before I get into how many more cars there actually is, and of course you guys know there is a lot more cars than that, it's worth looking at how the mayor basically is measuring this, and he's taking data from TfL. And what TfL are doing is that they're looking at some of their cameras, and they won't say which cameras because they're afraid that those cameras are going to be vandalized, as if the cameras are not being vandalized already anyway. But anyway, they are taking data from a select number of cameras, and what they're doing is, because they're anpr cameras, they're able to log the number plate of every car that's going in and out, and basically every car that's passing the camera. And through that's how they're working out that it's 1 in 10 cars. So 1 out of every 10 cars that passes those cameras is a non-ULEZ car. Now, there's a couple of issues with that. First of all, we don't know where those cameras are. Now, if they're on major roads and major arteries in and out of London, if you think about the fact that people that may be commuting into London will know that they're going into London and have actually got already ULEZ compliant cars in order to do that, then that's crazy, because then that means that, you know, those people are already complying. The figures are skewed. It doesn't make any sense because obviously those people have already got the appropriate cars. And when you think about the number of cars that exist, and you go to, for example, so what has happened, the BBC and others have gone to the SMMT, the Society for Motor Manufacturers and Traders, and the DVLA, which of course has the registration details of all the cars. And they've gone to those guys, and they have found that the figure is actually, it's only 84% compliancy, which means that 16% of cars are not complying, which, according to the figures, if you work it out, I think is 288,000 cars are not compliant in the outer London area. 288,000 cars. And this is according to what is actually registered with the DVLA. Now, it might be said that those cars are not used. I mean, you could say that about my car. I don't use this car every day. This is non-compliant. But I am in outer London, and I do use it. So I am going to be impacted by it. So whilst it's fair to say that maybe I don't use the car as much as normal people do, and I won't be passing those cameras, that's for sure. But at the same time, it's not fair to say that I'm not impacted by it. I am impacted by it. I am going to have to pay the £12.50 charge. So the thing is that I think the entire way that this is being measured is completely wrong, and I think that it's a much fairer assessment to look at the number of cars that are registered in the outer London area and figure it out that way. Now, absolutely fine. It could be said that a lot of those cars may not be used. They may be older cars, classic cars, but you know, a portion of those cars will be taken off the road, or maybe classics that only come out on the weekends. But if they come out on the weekends, they are getting impacted. So again, the whole discussion about whether or not the cars are being impacted is kind of out the window, because it's like, well, they are, because every time you drive the car, you are impacted. However, you may not be being picked up by the mayor's cameras and not counting as one of the cars that is impacted. So that's a whole load of nonsense. And of course, it's also worth pointing out that some of these cars, because they're in residential areas, they may only be used locally. So they may only be being used in their local streets, so that's why they're not being picked up on these cameras. And yet, on the other hand, like I said, like I showed you in my last ULEZ update, the cameras that are now being installed for this latest ULEZ expansion cover even the quietest of roads, so they will be picked up by those cameras. And the BBC put in a Freedom of Information request to act to get more data from the TfL. What they found was that TfL's own data, although the mayor claims that TfL has been accumulating this data since 2017 using this method of using the cameras, nonetheless, according to their own data, in 2021, TfL apparently said that 25% of cars did not comply, and that's 450,000 cars. Now, here's the crazy thing, and again, this doesn't make any sense, because if they are saying that as many as 25% of cars didn't comply just 2 years ago, 2021, right? And now they're saying that only 10% of cars don't comply. What you're saying is that in that 2-year time period, 15% of people have cars that now comply. Now they claim that's because of people have already switched up to newer cars because they knew ULEZ was coming. I don't know that many people have actually done that. Secondly, it's very hard to do that because it's hard to sell your non-ULEZ compliant car, and it's very hard to buy a new or a used ULEZ compliant car. A, because the prices have rocketed. B, because there's been a huge shortage of cars post-pandemic. We know that. That's been widely reported. It really isn't that easy to change your car, and even with newer cars, the waiting lists have sometimes been as long as 18 months on a new car. So how they've expected people in 2 years to have suddenly 15% of people have suddenly changed to new cars seems a little bit ridiculous. But okay, let's take their argument. Let's take their argument and say that, well, 15% of cars, or 15% of owners of cars have transitioned to newer compliant cars within 2 years. That means, then what's the point of doing this ULEZ expansion and targeting the 10% that are left, because by your accounting, they'll have transitioned within a year and a half as well anyway. So why spend 300 million pounds on this ULEZ expansion? And also, here's the other funny thing is, of course, it's 250 million pounds, I think, is for the infrastructure, 110 million pounds for the scrappage scheme. And the other thing that they claim, the mayor's office, is that, oh well, people have moved to new cars because of the scrappage scheme. So many people are like, we can't even access the scrappage scheme. First of all, it's not enough. £2,000 is not enough to buy you a new ULEZ compliant car, or barely even a used new ULEZ compliant car. And secondly, most people have not been able to access it. So that's a complete nonsense. So anyway, figures are completely bunk. They keep making up these figures and throwing them out there. Don't go by it. A lot of people are going to be affected. A lot of people, not just people with classics like me, but for example, people with ordinary family diesel cars that just do the school run locally in their neighborhood and maybe are completely unaware that their car is actually non-compliant, are suddenly going to be hit with this. So yeah, this is an ongoing issue. People keep asking me about the next protest. The best thing to do is to join the Facebook groups. There's lots of Facebook groups now, anti-ULEZ Facebook groups, but there's two major ones. Action Against ULEZ Facebook pages. You just go onto Facebook and search for it. There's no way you can't find them. Join them because all of this information is shared there. The next one that I'll be going to, I believe, is next week in Brent itself. For the first time, we're having one in Brent. I think it's at Brent Civic Centre at 5 o'clock. And it is on Wednesday, the 24th of May. So I'll see you there. Brown car guy. Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit the like button and share this video as well if you can. And while you're at it, check out these guys who also sponsor my content. I am deeply grateful to them because it helps me to buy new equipment, put fuel in the cars, and yes, buy a cup of coffee. You can do the same. Just go here or right here on YouTube. Just hit these three little dots down here and click on thanks. Make sure you're signed in first. My content is free, but this is how you can help me keep it that way. I may even send you a gift. Oh, by the way, watch this next.